Okay, welcome everyone to School of the Wilds, Terrific Turtles of Northeastern Ohio. My name is Jeff Riebe. I am your host, and today we're going to be exploring some of these really interesting and charismatic reptiles. Among the reptiles, there are very few of them that people can look at and say, oh, those are really attractive and appealing to a wide variety of people. And turtles, I think, are one of those groups. Most people like turtles. They're not afraid of them, unlike snakes and some other reptiles, certain types of lizards. They have a certain appeal that really is kind of universal. So what we're going to do today is we're going to talk about some of the different roles of turtles. We're going to be talking about where they live, adaptations, and we're going to be going over some of the types of turtles that we find here in northeastern Ohio, and specifically often in Cleveland Metro Parks. We've got a lot of wetlands and great habitats for them. So we're going to really explore turtles. And what I'd like to do is have questions at the end. So feel free to ask them when you have them. When they're at top of mind, just put a question in. And towards the end, we can answer those questions. Okay, so we're going to move along here. And so where do turtles live? Turtles can live in a wide variety of different habitats. They can be found in marshes, they can be found in ponds and swamps, lakes, rivers, and turtles can use different types of habitats during different times of the year. So depending on the species, they might spend the springtime hanging out in a vernal pool, searching for amphibian eggs to eat. And then maybe later in the year, they might find a place to escape the summer heat. They may find a place that's got some soft mud that they can bury in. So turtles can use different parts of their habitat, and depending on what time of year it is and depending what species of turtle it is. So they're often very adaptable, and some turtles are generalists, so they can live in a lot of different kinds of places. They can live in rivers, they can live in ponds, they can live in small bodies of water, even temporary bodies of water. But then others are really particular where they like to live, and they don't survive well in altered habitats. Okay, and what is their role in nature? So you might look at a turtle and wonder, what do these animals do in their habitats? What do they do that's unique and different and contributes to the ecology of a wetland or other habitat? So one of the most important things is turtles are food for many other kinds of animals. Turtle eggs are widely eaten by many types of animals, ranging from skunks to raccoons, opossums, other kinds of animals. Foxes will dig up turtle eggs, and the juvenile turtles are quite small when they hatch, and they're very vulnerable to wide variety of predators, ranging from fish to herons and even hawks and things like that. So, and even insects like giant water bugs have been known to catch baby turtles. So there's a lot of predators out there, and these little turtles are often very secretive. They like to hide. So one of the first things they do when they get into the water is they find a nice secluded weedy area to kind of get out of sight, and they find their food, and they grow rather quickly, and hopefully in time they reach a size that's a little less edible for a lot of these predators. So many turtles are scavengers, and scavengers of course help remove dead material from their habitats, which is always a good thing. So if there's dead fish, like after a winter fish kill, there may be a number of dead fish in a wetland, and those turtles will really go after those dead fish and help remove some of that. Of course, plant-eating turtles Herbivorous turtles will eat water plants. Snapping turtles and other turtles will eat different types of organisms ranging from insects, aquatic insect larvae, to fish, to even small waterfowl in the case of snapping turtles. So they are definitely predators, so they help to control populations of prey. And then box turtles spread the seeds of native plants in their woodland habitats. So especially the mayapple is eaten by box turtles, and it's been found that seeds that actually pass through a box turtle are able to perform better and more easily take root in their environment after they've gone through a box turtle. So pretty cool and interesting. Something you might not expect out of a turtle. And they have many adaptations. You look at a turtle and you see that this is a highly adapted creature. And the one in the illustration here is a soft-shell turtle, and it's a great example of some really cool adaptations. You can see it's got a flat shell. The shell itself is kind of leathery, unlike most turtles, and it has this tubular snorkel-like snout. And that is very, very good for getting air while remaining concealed. So these little turtles, especially juvenile like this one, is going to want to stay out of sight. And just using those little tubular nostrils, that little snorkel to get air, is a great way to stay out of sight. So many, many kinds of adaptations, and all these adaptations are going to help these different turtle species adapt and survive in their different habitats. So defenses, turtles do have a lot of defenses. The most notable and obvious defense turtles have is, of course, their shell. Turtles have a protective shell. Some turtles, like the box turtle, also have camouflage on their shell. So you look at this picture here, you can see this is an eastern box turtle, the image on the right of your screen, and you can see it's got these kind of radiating colors, these lighter colors, which blend in really well with the forest floor. And these patterns are really variable. No two eastern box turtles look exactly alike. They can actually be identified quite easily by their unique patterns. And the hard shell is common in many kinds of turtles, except the soft shell turtle. On the left here, you can see there's these two basking on a muddy bank along probably the Chagrin River. I think I know the exact spot over at Jackson Field. And those soft shell turtles are very fast swimmers. You don't normally think of a turtle as being quick and agile, but you've never met a soft shell turtle if you think that, because they are remarkably quick and reactive. It's hard to get close to them. They can run, skitter on the sand really quickly to the water, and they can swim faster than some fish can. Streamlined shape, look at that really flat shell, allows them to move very, very quickly. And then the defensive attitude of the common snapping turtle. And I say defensive deliberately. I'm not saying aggressive, because snapping turtles don't go out of their way to bite people. They are defensive. So they will leave you alone if you leave them alone. Mostly what happens is they're disturbed on land, they're vulnerable on land, and they use those sharp jaws to defend themselves. They're not going to go out of their way. Even people who swim in waters that have snapping turtles, it's not a common thing to get bitten by a snapping turtle when you're minding your own business. Just not something, they're not aggressive towards people normally. And soft shell turtles are also quite defensive and aggressive. Just about any turtle, a lot of the aquatic turtles can nip or bite, but the soft shells and the snapping turtles actually have the strength and the sharp jaws to really be able to give you a nice a good solid bite that you would be more concerned about. Predators, turtles, there's a lot of them. I have only 3 here. You might not think of a hawk as a predator of a turtle, but red-shouldered hawks live along wetland areas, and they certainly will catch and eat baby turtles, along with a number of other things, land animals, water snakes, frogs, and just about any other moving thing they can find along a wetland that's small enough they'll catch. And great blue herons will eat turtles, and they can eat surprisingly large turtles also. They can eat a good-sized painted turtle, maybe not a full adult, but they can really surprise you how big of a turtle they could swallow. And then the bass, smallmouth bass in this case, and largemouth bass in marshy areas will eat turtles as well. Raccoons and bald eagles are known to catch turtles, particularly musk turtles. Bald eagles will catch those, smaller species. And there's a lot of predators out there. Turtles have a rough first year or few years until they reach a certain size, when they're more, their shells have hardened up, their size has given them a little edge, and they're able to better withstand some of these predators. What do turtles eat? Well, depends on the kind of turtle. Box turtles, turtles on land, are going to eat a lot of terrestrial foods. They're going to eat the fungi, they're going to eat berries, they're going to eat grubs, they're going to eat all kinds of small invertebrates that live in the forest floor, dead animals. They're not picky. They're pretty much omnivores. So, and many kinds of turtles are omnivorous. Water turtles, painted turtles will eat vegetation, they'll eat water plants, dead fish. They sometimes will catch small living fish, but a lot of fish are too quick for turtles in general, but they'll catch certainly a few if they can. And then crayfish are a common food item for soft-shell turtles and map turtles. It's a really common food for those. So whatever's in their habitat, turtles will forage for it. They are really adaptable to a wide variety of different foods, and that may change throughout the year depending on what's available. Okay. Continuing the line, egg laying. So there are usually these snapping turtles, for example, are hidden. They're not easily seen. They spend most of their lives in the water. They're somewhat nocturnal, especially during summer months. They'll sometimes come out after dark, and they're not often seen, but when they're looking for nesting sites, they suddenly come out of nowhere. And if you have ever been to North Chagrin Reservation in the summertime, walking around the marsh in the pond, you may have seen a female snapping turtle like this one here, just wandering across a path, searching for a place to lay her eggs. And the painted turtles will do the same thing. And sometimes you can actually get a glimpse of them digging into the soil. They have a real preference around here for mulch beds. So they'll find areas that have that soft mulch and they'll dig in there. But I've seen them dig right in the lawn and just the grassy area, clay and grass. So they don't have to have sand or soft soil. They'll pretty much put it where they feel it's most appropriate. And when they hatch, they're really, really tiny. So many of these turtles they'll lay their eggs in the spring, and it takes about 2.5 months or so, depending on temperature and species of turtle, to hatch. And once they do hatch, these little turtles will have to find a body of water. So these little painted turtles and snapping turtles will sometimes be crossing the paths and trying to find the nearest body of water before they dry out, which if the female has laid them far from water, not all of them make it. And we often find raided nests as well. We'll find piles of eggshells where raccoons or skunks have found the nest and eaten the eggs. So not all of them make it. Most of them don't make it. So probably 70% or sometimes even more, sometimes into the 90% range don't survive these turtle nests. Especially if there's a high raccoon presence, they can really make a high impact. So baby turtles, not many of them survive, but if they get through their first few years, they grow quite rapidly. And once they reach adult size, most of them, as long as they're in the water, they're pretty safe from predators. All right, we're going to go into turtle facts and identification. We're going to talk about some of the turtles that we find here in northeastern Ohio and kind of go over some of the interesting facts about them. And again, I'd like to remind everyone, if you have any questions about anything, feel free to leave the question in the chat. And then at the end, I can answer some of those questions, and you know, feel free to just put them down when they come up. All right, so facts and identification. We're going to start with the common snapper because common snapping turtles are really common. They're one of our most familiar turtles. If you come here to North Chagrin in the springtime, we often see these large snapping turtles basking on logs with the painted turtles. And that's usually early in the year when it's still really cool outside, and they are basically trying to warm up. And later in the year, like in the summertime, we rarely see that basking behavior. But this is the habitat they like. They like these mud-bottomed, marshy, swampy areas, and they are really adaptable turtles. They can be found just about anywhere. I found snapping turtles in vernal pools in the spring, searching for wood frog eggs and spotted salamander eggs. And I've also found them in rivers. I found them in marshes and ponds and lakes. We find them on land during the nesting season, wandering sometimes great distances from water. So that's how these turtles spread everywhere, is because they wander, they spread, they go to lay their eggs long distances from water, and those juveniles can establish new areas quite easily. So they're very mobile turtles. And as you can see, they can be quite big and impressive. This one on the left here was a big one that we found in the marsh, and we just borrowed it for a program and put him right back in the water when we were done. And this turtle is a big male, and the male snapping turtles are larger than the females. And that's kind of unusual in turtles. Usually the female is larger in most species of turtles, but in the snapping turtles, that's not the case. The males are bigger. They're really easily identified because they're a massive turtle. They've got a dinosaur-like tail with spikes on the top, huge legs, thick legs with big front claws, big rear claws, and a sharp hooked beak. When they're younger, they tend to have a rougher shell, but as they get older, the shell tends to get smoother. But because they spend so much time underwater, they often have a thick layer of algae growing on them, and they're usually covered in leeches. In fact, every snapping turtle that I can recall that I've handled or been close to has had leeches covering its body. So they're a leech magnet when they're out there in those wetlands. And you can see that picture of the one basking on the log there. So they do spend some time basking. They don't have a lot of predators. Once they reach their mature sizes, there's not much that's going to mess with a snapping turtle. A lot of them get hit by cars when they're looking for nesting sites, but they're really well protected, and that aggressive attitude really helps to protect them. And I want to show you the shells of these turtles. One of the reasons they're so aggressive is because they really don't have much defense on the underside. This is the shell of a snapping turtle, deceased. And you can see that it has the small sized lower shell, which is called the plastron. And then the carapace is the top of the shell. The bridge is that thin area that connects the two. And the bridge can be a different, shape and dimensions depending on the type of turtle, but those are basically the three parts of the shell. And you can see that the turtle does have a backbone that is attached to the shell. So the turtle shell is a part of its body, and it is growing with the turtle. And it does change shape somewhat as the animal grows. So usually baby turtles have a different shell shape. Sometimes it may be rounder or more textured, but as they mature, it changes. We're going to keep moving into invasive species here. We're going to talk about the red-eared slider. We can't have a turtle talk without mentioning the red-eared slider because they are common here in our area. They are not native to northeastern Ohio. They are primarily a turtle of the Mississippi drainages. They are not really found in our area, but they are commonly released here, unfortunately. So if you're out here looking at turtles at the marsh at the Nature Center here at North Chagrin, you're probably going to see a few red-eared sliders mixed in with the painted turtles. They're pretty easy to identify. They have a red stripe going down the side of their head. If you happen to be close enough to pick one up, you can see they've got the plastron with these kind of yellow coloring with these black spots. And they're a common pet trade turtle. That's why they are so commonly seen around here, is because they are not fantastic pets for most people. They require expensive tanks with filtration, large tanks. They need a lot of food regularly. They make a lot of messes. They need heavy filtration. And they live for 40 to 50 years or more. So that's a long time to keep a pet. That's a long time to have a commitment to an animal. Most people can't commit to that for the lifetime of the animal. So they release them here, which is illegal, and it can cause problems for the native species because these turtles can outcompete them and potentially spread disease as well. So what do we look for? Looking out on the marsh, you might see that, okay, we got these big turtles out here. Usually the bigger ones are the sliders, and these could be either the red-eared sliders or they could be the yellow-bellied sliders. They're both found around here. I would say the red ear is the more common of the two dump turtles, but both yellow-bellied sliders and red-eared sliders are not native to our area. And but they are found basking among the smaller painted turtles. You can see the smaller painteds in this photo here. So don't dump that turtle. In the years that I've worked here, I have found myself most of the turtles on this list here, with the exception of the Sulcata Tortoise, which was found by someone else in another park district nearby. But any of these turtles can be found in park areas. Turtles are difficult pets for most people, and they're a pet that many people get on impulse, and they do unfortunately get released into the metro parks. So in the summertime, you might find just about anything swimming around in our wetland areas, particularly if there's a picnic area or a place where a lot of people hang out. A number of years ago, we had an alligator snapping turtle dumped here. Diamondback Terrapins, which are a brackish water species found on the East Coast. One year I found about 6 or 7 of those scattered around different wetlands in North Chagrin. And all of these others have been found here. Not all of them can survive for long periods. Most of them probably die shortly after they're released, once it gets cold. You know, South American wood turtle is not adapted to a Northeast Ohio winter. A yellow-bellied slider or a red-eared slider might survive. So it depends on which kind of turtle it is. So the Midland painted turtle, another common turtle that we find here in our parks. It is the turtle that we find often in lakes and ponds and marshy areas, basking in large numbers on logs and rocks and areas near wetland areas. You can see this huge pile of Midland painted turtles. And what I like to look for is the reddish coloration on the neck and on the legs and in the sides of the shell, undersides of the shell, along the rim of the shell, and some yellow markings on the head. They're not a very big turtle, you know, about 6 inches, 7 inches or so at most. They're not very large, but they're found in just about every pond or wetland that we have around here. The underside of the Midland painted turtle typically has this dark blotch in the center, as you can see, but sometimes they have this staining that occurs in certain waters where there are certain minerals which will cause the scales, the scutes, to become darker. So this photo here on the bottom left shows a Midland painted turtle where the scutes have shed, the stained scutes have shed off and exposed the lighter colored true color of the turtle's plastron. So don't be confused if you find a painted turtle and it's got this really, really dark color to the plastron. It could just be staining. Going to move on to the spotted turtle. This is one that we're not going to find a lot around here. They are unfortunately becoming very uncommon. They are considered threatened in the state of Ohio. This particular picture, I apologize for the graininess. This was taken back in probably the 80s by myself of a turtle that I found many, many years ago in Solon. And that population, unfortunately, is no longer there. Like many spotted turtle habitats, it was destroyed for housing developments. And unfortunately, these turtles have become very rare in the state. So if you find spotted turtles, I think it would be a good idea to notify the ODNR, Ohio Division of Wildlife, and let them know, because they are quite uncommon, and any sighting of a spotted turtle is significant. So wonderful turtles, very small, very distinctive with the black shell and the little yellow spots. The woodland box turtle is another one that is uncommon around here. They're more commonly found down in southern Ohio and also in the northwestern part of the state in the Oak Openings area, but we can find them in any of our parks. We find them often in North Chagrin. I'd say every couple of years we find one or two, and these turtles may be released pets. We don't know for sure the origin of them. There is a population in the national park as well, and we don't necessarily know the origin of some of these animals, but they may be released pets where people have collected them from other areas and over the years released them into either metro parks or the national park. But they are really a beautiful turtle and found in woodland habitats. They eat mushrooms, they eat invertebrates, and they are really cool in their shell development. They're one of these turtles that has the ability to really close their shell up. And there aren't many turtles that can close up as thoroughly as a eastern box turtle or woodland box turtle. Woodland box turtle is the currently accepted name. They used to be called eastern box turtles. but now most people go by the Woodland Box Turtle name. And as you can see, they have this hinge on the shell, on the lower shell, the plastron. It's kind of light colored in this individual, and that can allow this turtle to completely close its shell so that you can't even get probably a piece of paper in between that. So completely protects the legs, the head, the tail of the turtle when it's fully boxed up. So they have really great protection. And underneath the scutes or the scales of the shell, it's bone. So this picture in the center, you can see that the shell is actually made of bone on the underside, and it's just covered by these colorful scutes or scales, which help to protect it and help the turtle with camouflage. So Eastern box turtles, I would say, I mean, when you say ultimate shelled reptile, every turtle's shell is sort of perfect for its lifestyle. Box turtles, the close-up shell is perfect because their habitat, they are constantly encountering raccoons and skunks and other predators that could potentially eat them, and they have to really have a good defense. Many of the other turtles, like soft-shell turtles, box turtle shell would not work with a soft-shell turtle. And with a map turtle, they've got a particular shell that works well for them. So really, box turtle's ultimate shell is ultimate for a box turtle. So this is another one, just showing the color of the eyes. So this one is a female with the brown colored eyes. Males will have the reddish colored eyes. Gonna keep moving here. The common musk turtle or stink pot is a rarely seen small turtle that we have around here. And rarely seen, they sometimes come out after dark, just like snapping turtles, so we may not see them very often, but they're very, very tiny turtles. They rarely come out of the water. Their defense is a horrific smell that comes from some glands along the sides of their shell, along the bridge of their shell, and gives them the common name of stink pot or stinking Jim, which I kind of like even better. So they are a really interesting small turtle, but rarely seen because they're usually underwater and often not really very, they're just very hard to see. They blend in well with the dark coloration, and a lot of people aren't looking for them like they are for painted turtles. And then the northern map turtle. Northern map turtle is a kind of an uncommon turtle in most habitats. They like rivers, they like lakes, they do not like ponds, they do not like marshes. They are typically a turtle of big waters. So you'll find them in some of the areas around Lake Erie, bays of Lake Erie. You'll find them in cleaner rivers like the Grand River, and they like deeper water. They like a particular type of riverine habitat. So they are a really interesting turtle that we don't really see around here. We see a lot of painted turtles. We see a lot of snapping turtles around here at North Chagrin, but we don't see a lot of map turtles, but they're around in the rivers. And they have amazing jaws, especially the females have these huge crushing jaws for eating crayfish and mussels and snails. The males are a lot smaller and they tend to feed on insect larvae, and they're much, much smaller than the females. They don't have those massive mollusk crushing heads that the females do. Really spectacular turtle. Identified mostly by their larger size, about 10 inches for a big female, and those massive heads with the yellow stripes and the yellow spot behind the eyes. The Blandings turtle is a pretty uncommon turtle around here. They're state threatened. There is a small group of them. Don't want to necessarily call it a population, but there are some that are in the Ohio and Erie Canal Reservation. but mostly these turtles are found along Lake Erie and the marshes, like McGee Marsh over there by more of the western part of the state. But they tend to prefer big open habitats. They do a lot of wandering and moving, so they often don't do well where there's a lot of roads and places where they could potentially encounter cars. This is one of those turtles that uses a lot of different habitats depending on its the time of year and its age. So Blanding's turtles are pretty interesting, but best place to observe them, I'd say, is the McGee Marsh Boardwalk. If you ever head out in that area, that's a good place to look for the Blanding's turtle. And then the Spiny softshell turtles. Spiny softshells are one of my favorites, and they have that really unturtle-like look. When you think of a turtle, this isn't usually what comes to mind. They kind of look like a pancake. They've got a flat shell, very flexible. They've got these fleshy lips that cover the beak, which is actually quite sharp. And they've got incredible, almost flipper-like feet that help them to swim very, very quickly. Great camouflage. This is the underside of a softshell turtle, if you're curious. The top side is very well camouflaged, and these turtles will often bury under the sand. The underside is much lighter in color and very smooth and slippery. You can see that one on the left here is completely buried underneath the sandy substrate except for the head, and they will sometimes completely bury themselves for long periods of time. So the spiny softshell is mostly, like the map turtle, more of a river turtle. So we find the spiny softshell in slow-moving sections of the Chagrin River, usually areas where there's a sandy or kind of muddy, silty bank, some deep, slow-moving water nearby, and they can be quite common in those kinds of habitats. The females are gigantic. They can get up to 18 inches long in shell length, and the males they're lucky if they get to be 10 inches long shell length. Turtles like this might live to be 50 years old, so they're fairly long-lived for a turtle. They can't quite match the ages of a woodland box turtle, which can sometimes exceed 100 years. But these are one of the longer-lived types of turtles that we have around here. Okay. All right. I want to open it up to some questions. Okay, I see here, what is the native snapping turtle called? So we call it the common snapping turtle. That is the one that we have in our area. The alligator snapping turtle is a much larger type of turtle, and they are found in the Mississippi drainages and also in the Apalachicola area, Swanee River area near Florida. So they are there's actually thought to be potentially 3 species of alligator snapper now. They're still doing some research on that, but the one we have up here is the common snapping turtle. Baby turtles are born late in the breeding season. Will they stay in the ground? Yes, they will. So sometimes, especially painted turtles, will sometimes overwinter in the nest, and they are very well adapted to survive. Not all of them make it, of course, if there's extensive periods of very serious cold, they may not survive, but they do fairly regularly overwinter in their nests, only to emerge in the spring. Okay, I see this other question here. Will eagles pick up turtles to eat? Yes, they will. In fact, some bald eagle nests have been found with piles of musk turtle shells in them. So they absolutely will eat turtles. They've got a pretty, beak is a pretty, pretty fine tool. They can reach down, reach right into those turtle shells and pull out the turtles quite easily. pretty good tool for that. Let's see, what is the most common native species? Well, lifespan of the most common native species of turtles. Snapping turtles are common snappers, can live to be maybe 40 or 50 years old. And of course, some may live longer than that. Spotted turtles are thought to be one of those species that can live to be quite old. They have been 50 years or sometimes even older has been proposed, that they might even be able to surpass 100. They can live a very, very long time. The painted turtles, the common painted turtles, 30 years, 40 years, something like that. You know, depending on the kind, they do have different lifespan. Let's see. How long does brumation last for an adult painted turtle? Brumation is the reptile version of hibernation. And, you know, the great thing about turtles is they can wake up if it warms up. So if there's a warm spell in the wintertime, they may actually become active and they may come out and bask, even if some of their wetland is still covered in ice. I've seen that here at North Chagrin on those rare warm winter days when you know, there's a open spot in the marsh and there's a log and a couple painted turtles will come out and sit in the sun for a few hours. So they will sometimes come out of their brumation, and some of these turtles will be active under the ice. Snapping turtles have been known to be seen crawling very slowly under the ice, and painted turtles will do the same thing. So generally, you know, they stop eating once it reaches a certain temperature. You know, around October, usually they will stop eating, and then they will sometimes go through until it starts to warm up in spring, you know, late March, April, then they may start to move around a little bit, but they're not going to start eating until the temperatures are warm enough that they can start digesting. Do snappers and soft shells brumate? Yes, they do. Yes, they do. Again, the snapping turtles will sometimes be active under the ice. Okay, how do you determine the age of a turtle? The turtle's age really can be determined by, in some cases, counting the annuli on their shell, but it's really not a perfect way of doing it. So box turtles, for example, will develop rings, almost like the rings of a tree on their carapace. And to a certain age, you can kind of roughly estimate how old they are. But the really old ones, that all wears away. You know, all these years of burying themselves under the substrate, they will often wear down those annuli, so they become very smooth, so it's very hard to tell. Okay. Well, I would love to answer more questions. Unfortunately, we're just about out of time. So I want to thank you guys for joining us here tonight. And if you have any additional questions, feel free to email me at jar@clevelandmetroparks.com if you have any more questions about turtles, any of the ones that I couldn't get to. I'd be happy to help out. So thank you guys for joining me tonight. And we do have another School of the Wilds upcoming, Mammals of Ohio with Marty Calabrese. He's going to be talking about some really cool mammals of Ohio. And if you need additional information about turtles, the ODNR is a good resource as well. They've got a great little field guide. And it can be a little hard to see here, but it is Reptiles of Ohio Field Guide, and it's a great little book. It's got different turtles, and it's got snakes and lizards found in northeastern Ohio, or actually the whole state, and it's a nice resource. So thank you again for joining us, and hope to see you again at our next School of the Wilds. So have a great evening.